Kicked me off the stage. That's a first. Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing today? I hope everyone is fine. Let me just. All right, let's see who is around. Fireman 5864, T-Style Monster, Nevadol, David L. Wonderful name. Martin, Fanny Toro, Crip, Harris, Ryan, Matt Hatter, Shitagos, Girls, Dominican Investor, Madam. People joining too fast. Mickey, Smiley, Cafe, Rajay, so Tom. Welcome to the Pillars Hot Seat. And here's also Mr. Hatter. How are you feeling today, sir?
Good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm perfectly fine. Long day, and I'm happy that we'll have a lovely conversation with someone that has been in here many, many times. Always brings in a good energy. Always brings in the good info. I'm looking forward to it. And there he is. Oh, oh, people are jumping out and jumping back in, left and right. Bear Bull Whale. Lovely to see so many people already around, right? Awesome. Oh, okay.
Hello.
Keith. Long
How
time
is
no talk. No speak.
Not that long, right? Not long
How
enough.
you doing, my man? No,
I'm
ouch.
I'm pretty good. We're having a nice start to our week, and we are preparing a lot of decisions on the back end for some of our roadmap items. Things are starting to make a nice picture. Maybe we'll share some of that alpha. Maybe we won't. And how are you doing?
I'm doing perfectly fine. By the way, I currently hold Gabo hostage. If you don't share some alpha, he is going to suffer. So
we all have to take losses someday, right? So
funny thing is, I don't see him around right now, so this might not just be a threat. So
he's in the middle of Disney World right now with his family. So
that's awesome.
yeah,
I see Duff saying hashtag save Gabo.
There's no payday tomorrow because he's spending it all at Disney World.
That's awesome. Great for him. Yeah, I mean, he deserves it. He's working very, very hard, right?
Sure. From not so much, but
Gabo got rugged and he's not even here.
yeah, we can't attack someone who can't defend himself, right?
Good thing this will be recorded. Just gonna send him the timestamp and the video, and then he will know what's up. But awesome that you're back in, and that we're gonna have a longer, in-depth conversation with you about Monstro, because also the interesting thing about it is that like the first time we had you on with Monstro was like something completely different to what you're doing now, obviously, because it was still in terms of the raffle, because before you did the transition, then we had the short one. So basically, this is like the first real CE about Monstro as it is right now, right?
It is. The first one was, our gamified little bit of a twist on a lotto, a crypto lotto targeting players, not investors. But that totally, completely failed to raise, I think we got just under half our kind of small goal. So yeah, that's what we did the original one about. And it's very, very different now.
That's why you have to prepare yourself for difficult questions like what is Monstro and what is yield farming. So brace yourself, right?
I'm ready.
Alrighty, Mr. Mad Hatter, do you want to get the party started? Are you good to go?
I am good to go.
Perfect. Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good night. Thank you all for coming. Welcome to The Pillars. We are a community-led space aimed at supporting protocols and educating our investors for intelligent, meaningful conversation. Here we ask the tough questions you all want answered. Now, let me reintroduce to you the one and only OX Various Keith from Monstros Universe. We already had him on this in the hot seat 3, 4, 5 times, 6 times already. Plentiful times. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Today, we're here to it's a follow-up to the last CE that we had, which was just a short introductionary CE to Monsters Universe. And this time, Mad Hatter is going to go in and going to do the grilling, of course, as everyone knows of him. But yeah, please participate in the community questions channel. As you know, for every message, you are getting rewarded some juicy PXP. Also, I think this is not part of a giveaway, but I'm also just going to put it out there. I would say the best couple of questions are going to get some PXP on top of that as well, 100 PXP each as well. That I'm going to reward while I'm checking the stage questions channel. And of course, even more important is the giveaway that we have at the moment going on as for this event. As you can see, $105 giveaway for the people that already are familiar with Monstro. They know what that means. This is their Cycle Sea Farms NFT, which is worth $105. And if you don't know what it's about, this is the perfect place for you to learn about it, ask questions, and dive into the Monstros universe. I think I'm going to step off my soapbox now, and I let the gentleman here have a lovely conversation. Thank you, guys, and enjoy.
Thank you very much,
Vito.
David. Keith, how are you, sir?
Good. I'm just starting to sip on my tea here, the whacked out kind. So I'm prepared.
Good. I'm glad. So am I. So, I know we had you on not that long ago. I'm sure there's going to be at least 1 or 2 people in here that don't necessarily know what Monstro is. Can you give us a brief overview of what it is?
Yeah, so Monstro's universe is just that. It's a planned universe that's going to have a lot of different facets, a lot of different ways people can invest. It's not going to be restricted to a certain area. We've already started some subsections such as tools, such as games, and we're going to keep expanding on that. But our primary revenue generator and what kind of caught people's attention is the first thing we've started with, which is yield farming. And more specifically, it's high risk, high yield, especially on chains such as base chain, pulse chain, chains that are still up and coming. They're not exactly major Polygon, Binance type chains that were around last cycle. So that's where we're looking mostly for new opportunities, as well as any chain out there. I mean, we do explore things like SUI, OPBNB, other areas. But let's just say there's not a lot of quality yet, and there's a lot of rugs to navigate through. So this is kind of what we do as a managed service for people who want to be earning those yields or cutting those yields. But there are a lot of risks involved, and we try to vet those for people as best we can.
Great, thank you. In terms of how it currently looks, how it was going to look, and how it looks in the future, obviously there's this love of gaming that you have and this love of creating universes. If you had gone back to the start and knew that you would be delving into yield farming, would this have been the direction that you would have gone in terms of the visuals, in terms of how you're marketing it? Or are you now in a place where you wanted something, and it had a certain brand feel to it that you wanted to stick with, and yield farming is now just the kind of thing that you're leaning in towards because you're being quite successful at it.
Yeah, so in hindsight, we wish we would have started yield farming much earlier and with other projects where we had capital, and then used that income to fund other endeavors. So even for example, with our company Master Brews, if we had gotten into when we sold out NFT collections, instead of putting that money and the burn rate we did into building games, which we got halfway and then ran out of funding, it would have been a much smarter move to have been yield farming and take those proceeds that'll continue and use that to fund our other efforts and build out. So in retrospect, I think I wish we would have been doing farming in a lot of things, including Lazarus Pit as well, which is another whole topic. But it's never too late, and we still think it's a great time. And all the experience we're gaining right now and the positions we're setting up is going to be extremely lucrative, we think, and valuable property for everyone involved come the next cycle, which probably a year away still, right? So,
right, is that what you're anticipating then? A year away?
I originally thought that it'd probably start like most people around the next Bitcoin halving. I don't think that's going to be the case right now with what's going on in the world. So I think it's going to be a little later than the initial expectations. I think we'll see flashes of it and more mini pumps, but then definitely pullbacks. I don't think it'll really, really get running until at least Q2, but more likely Q3 of next year. And then, like most of those cycles, it'll run for at least, a really nice maybe 12 months, maybe 15 months, somewhere in that range.
Great. Okay. I think it's good for anybody who is invested or wants to invest to hear where your thoughts are at, so they know what you're building towards. I think that's always a good thing for people to hear. Did you? I'm glad, and it's nice to hear that you're cognizant of the fact that if you had been able to go back in time, and retrospective thinking means that you might have approached this slightly different. Is there, or do you feel any sort of pressure now with the way that it looks in terms of, you mentioned that this is high risk, and of course, Cuddly Monsters and the way that it's designed doesn't necessarily tell people high risk. Is there now a pressure for you to almost fight against that kind of look and feel to really inform the investors, both currently in Monstro and who will be joining Monstro, that this is at the moment high risk. We are building out to create a world. It is a fun place to be, but we make no illusions in the fact that at some point you can be heavily down in impermanent loss in these farms, and there is always a risk that something goes wrong.
So I think because there's a clear separation and there will be going forward, the only people who have their hands in kind of everything that the ecosystem will do, they were the original investors. So they're already in, right? They're people who have been in since the beginning. Everyone coming in now, if you specifically purchase a farms NFT, you should be doing your research about what is the farms, what are the risks. We're very clear about what the risks are. Everything also is very transparent. People can see the daily results all the time. We try to downplay, if there's any overhyping, anything like that, and try to just keep people grounded in reality. But when we do have other, different sections, so for example, if we have a tool that you could invest in the future, or for our games, these are all different risks in different areas. So it really depends on what someone comes into. And I don't think the visual appeal, though, is going to, it's not there to fool anyone. It's just something we thought was really attractive for a brand because it doesn't limit us for whatever we want to do in the gaming world or in the in real life products world, right? Like if we did one day do something like an energy drink or did X, Y, or Z, or I don't know, stuffed animals or coloring books on Amazon, if we did anything that ties in the brand, it's a great brand to have because it's so like mainstream appeal and it's so there's so many widespread uses we could do. Kids could like it, adults could like it, right? Men could like it, women could like it, X could like it, anybody could like it.
Right. Great. I mean, I like the branding. I like the way it looks, certainly. It has a fun feel to me, of course, but I always think it's just interesting to then ask the question, how does that branding then compete with the narrative that you're putting out there? Where, you say you keep people grounded in the Discord, which is great. Where would you advise people go to get most of the information for Monstro in its current form? Because as you're transitioning, naturally things need to transition with it, including your white paper, including the DApp that you have. And not everything necessarily is going to be on there straight from the get-go. So where are you guiding people mostly to get that valuable information?
The Discord is by far the number one place. We have all our team of mods as well, a lot of helpful community members, even if they're not a mod. There's a lot of info channels there. So that's by far the best place. We know we have to do a lot better on neglected sources like Telegram. It's still very popular in DeFi, more so than Discord. We just, we've never been into Telegram so much, even though we're on there for business reasons. It is something we definitely have to improve. Same with using social media like Twitter and such. But
Right.
yeah, for now we've been purely focused on Discord, and the wiki's pretty up to date. I think the only real thing we're missing now is kind of more information as far as like the FAQ, but that is something we'll have to add shortly. For now, anybody with a question who does ask it, they usually get a pretty instant answer from one of the many community members or mods themselves.
Right. Yes. One of the things that I know that your community speaks very highly of is your ability to answer questions. I know Tom Jones was keen to listen to this particular CEE because he wanted to hear at least some questions he hasn't himself already seen or asked extensively within the Monstro community and during any of the AMAs. Because one of the things that I know you do very well is you don't shy away from tough questions, and you take everything that's being asked at face value and are prepared to answer all those questions.
Yeah, I'm a very, very blunt person back to my punk teen roots, but I definitely think I come across a little more professional now versus those days. But no question to me is off limits in anything we're doing. So
Right, great. And I feel you about Telegram. We have a presence of about 3 people on Telegram. I just can't get on with it. For me, it just does not. It's not appealing to the eye, and I find it very difficult to navigate. So I understand why you've used Discord as a main hub. As you create this world that you're wanting to move towards, are you thinking about perhaps there being a social element where people can talk within that world rather than having to rely on one of these platforms to communicate and get information?
do you mean so far as having like kind of a actual metaverse presence or?
Yeah, a metaverse presence, or just something that is expands a little bit beyond just the different fractions of DeFi that you want to kind of explore, including games, of course, but having something that is more socially interactive for people.
Yeah, I think right now, the priority is obviously on making people money, making
Mhm.
a lot of things, building a lot of things, getting in position for the upcoming market. I think once we have a lot of that stuff done, we'll switch kind of in parallel to building out the engagement more. But I
Right.
just saw a quick comment here from Funny Toro in the sidebar. There is a good point that a lot of our investors, they are, no matter what we offer, they're not going to engage because they're looking for passive income. And by definition, that means they want to set it and forget it and just get paid. And that's what we're trying to focus on. So, I'd love to have a super active community. And of course, things like games and other, weekly nights we can host and do different things, especially with
Mhm.
partners such as perhaps the Pillars. All that stuff will help those who like to be active and really in it. But I think it'll always be the case where the large majority, they want a passive investment they don't have to think about, and not more than that, not worry about, and just say, hey,
Right.
everyone, they told me I'm getting paid and I'm getting paid. So I don't think it's necessarily a top priority to provide engagement, but I think we still should for everyone who wants to. And it helps those people feel more like it is, their monster family. And from a business perspective, it's also great because people, if they're more engaged, they're going to be more invested. If they do want to put new funds in something, they're going to think of you first, right? Especially if you're delivering. So, from both personal and business, it's a good thing to do, but it's definitely not a priority in the passive income space, I don't think.
Okay, that's fair enough, and I appreciate the observation from Funny Toro that a lot of this is passive, of course. Not so passive for you guys as you are working hard in the background to ensure you're finding the right farms, you've got the right setup. NFTs and having that as a sunk cost with a certain ROI system was one of those setups. How did you fall upon that particular approach? Was there another idea or many other ideas that you might have kind of sifted through and tested maybe at the back end before you fell on this particular approach?
Yeah, so before we decided to go for Monstro, we actually were going to launch something called Gauntlet Fund. And Gauntlet had the same idea of having a lot of diverse streams and options for people and things they could invest in. But one of the hardest parts was designing how do we do a lot of those things that can incur, unrealized loss or impermanent loss and let people withdraw their money on demand. So that's a major challenge, and we felt it was way too limiting and restrictive. The only thing you can really do, in my opinion, for that is the way traditional finance, or let's say a mutual fund, works, where you have a daily native asset value, and people buy in and buy out based on that daily value, and it's not something set in stone, right? You can request a withdrawal today, but if we have to exit positions at a loss, there has to always be that asterisk that by the time we process your withdrawal tomorrow, perhaps you're going to get even less so than you thought you are. And, of course, if you have enough liquidity, you can float funds to cover that. But it gets into a real chicken and egg situation with that, trying to build that up if you don't already have it. So we decided, the sunk cost, I really didn't think people would go for it at first. But the more I looked at the way people were talking in the space with so many projects that they never ROI in, even if you have flexibility to withdraw, and then the funds are just gone, right? Whether it's a failure, whether it's a rug, etc. What is the real difference? You're not getting your money back. So why not simplify it to sunk cost? And then that makes everything so much easier, so much clearer. If the project's doing well, there is liquidity for those who want to exit through being able to sell, in this case, the NFT, right? We've had a lot of people who've sold them only for profit. I don't think anybody's sold a Monstro NFT yet for less than what they paid for it. And unless they're asking a very high multiple, they've been able to move those really quickly. So I think that's the better balance. And especially for things like farming, where there is a lot of expected IL, you can't offer people a withdraw whenever you feel like. It just doesn't work.
No, I hear you. And I think taking that pressure off of what you guys are doing was a smart move. And as some people will feel, it's a very good way to encourage and incentivize long-term holdings, because people are jumping in, knowing that, as a sunk cost, they're in, right? So they're now making a decision that is fully informed, and they know they're going to be supporting you for the long term. How do you guys have details on how close the first people are to full ROI and then just pure profit?
Yeah, so we began August 11th, and payday tomorrow will be the 8th. So it'll be just about 3 months. And the original group of investors, which was the first, I want to say the very first 60 something thousand, like who were in on the very first payday, they will be somewhere around 73%, I think, tomorrow. So they're
Okay.
getting pretty close. I mean, if we maintain, let's say, 3-ish% a week for them, another 10 weeks. Our original goal was 5 months, 20% a month. So it looks like even if we don't go up and we just stay where we are, we're going to pretty much hit that right on the nose for the first people in.
Right. Great. And I mean, that's very impressive. You've been topping our weekly investment updates week in, week out now since you've been on it. And I'm impressed by the returns. It's going to come with a lot of pressure. And I'm impressed by the returns, even with the percentage of impermanent loss that you guys have at the minute. I think it's somewhere between 50 and 60%, if I'm not mistaken. And that's with your perspective that with a couple of those, we've bottomed out and are likely to just go up from here, which means, that's going to start to, that percentage will be eaten up quite quickly as we start to increase. But there is going to be pressure maybe at times to find the right farm or find something that's going to return you maybe a bigger pot while we're sitting in that kind of IL range that's quite high. Do you feel that pressure? How does that work within the team and perhaps the community? Do you discuss slightly riskier plays do you take? I know you said you've taken a lot of them completely off the table because there's a ton of rugs out there. But how does that work, and who do you turn to as the team lead when you might see something that you think is good, but you're not quite sure, and you want to bounce thoughts off of somebody?
So obviously, everyone on the team we gather input from, but there's also a lot of our holders who I know just from talking to them. Some of them almost daily. It's become obvious to me they have a lot of experience in farming themselves. Some of them don't have the time or the desire to do it. Some of them want the blended risk that the way our system is set up offers. Some of them don't want to pay bridging fees, doing all the hassle of different things. So, but there's a lot of them that know absolutely what they're talking about. So we always have more people to bounce some things we might be iffy on. From a technical perspective, there's no question there. Like I would vet them myself, but I also have a large network of techs that if I say, hey, I'm really unsure about this or don't understand this, can you take it, give a second pair of eyes? That's something I don't think, I'll never say never because we can still screw up, but I don't think we'll ever be rugged based on like a contract situation. I think we'll be
Right.
rugged based on liquidity situations, right? Team disguising wallets, gambles that we know are gambles that don't pay off. Those are the type of things we'll lose money in. The other ones, it's just a matter of price action, which is always going to go up and down. But right now, it is still a bear market. A lot of them to get that very nice, juicy return at the beginning, which attracted a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
It was something where we expected, yes, they'll drop. Some of them drop way further than we thought. But as long as the team's building, we see there's a lot of positive things going on. And I'll use the example here of, Alien Base. I talk to their team, their founders almost every day. They bounce ideas off me of things they want to do. They bounce it off other, people that I know. So that's a sign to me, they're going to stick around. Their price is going to come back up as we enter a bull. It could be extremely lucrative. These are all small market caps as well. So if they solidify themselves as like a top 5 or top 10 DEX on a chain like Base, it's a similar situation with one of the Pillars partners with AJ and SparkSwap. Exactly the same. We keep putting more in them. It might not be the highest paying, but it's one we have a high level of trust and security in, and we know the price is going to come at some point. So that's one also. We got in at about $1. It might be whatever it is now, 20 cents or something, but we're not worried about those positions. The thing we have to do is, because they have dropped so much, we have to balance them with some risk to still somewhat maintain a pretty good weekly result. And that's where it gets hard, because it is very hard to find things that pay well without they'll be gone in 5 days or 7 days.
Right. And do you ever find yourself worrying about being able to sustain the payouts, the weekly payouts that you're giving out? It's how self-sustaining are you, I suppose, is another question that I can piggyback onto that. If no more buys of the NFTs came in, where do you think you will be with the current setup, with the current farms that you're in, and what do you think perhaps your duration time will be there?
So I think the ultimate worst case, knowing that at least 2 of our positions we think are super safe, but let's say even one of those 2 goes down. I think the realistic expectation is results might drop lower and lower. Maybe it's only going to be in an ultimate worst case, the lowest I'd see us was maybe 1%, 1.5% per week. I don't think even if we lost most of our positions, we'd get lower than that, and that's with no new money coming in. And in that case, it would be a matter of still holding it. Everyone, I'm sure wouldn't be too happy, but it's not something where we'll be totally liquidated. It's not something where there's negative return, right? The yield is still going to come. It's just going to be less yield than we're used to or than we'd like. And then I still think, even if we're stuck in just one place, at some point, if it's still around and still working by the bull cycle, it is going to go up, and it can go up tremendously quick. So that's, I would say, our worst case scenario. I don't think it's realistic. I think, we're going to maintain a pretty decent base here. But it could still go lower, of course, and there could be a black swan event that, even for 3 weeks, wipes everything out and puts it really on the ground. And that's going to be market wide, of course, but we're not
Gotcha.
immune to any of that.
I find it crazy that we're sitting in a space where we can talk about 1 to 1.5% a week, and then in the same sentence say, "I know people won't be happy with it." Right? It's it's one of those weird situations where 1 to 1.5% a week is massive, and where else in life are you likely to get those kind of returns? Is that a challenge for you, just trying to explain to people that while that might seem low, if it were ever to get to that point, actually, in terms of returns, that's very significant, and it means you're still doing very well.
I think for the most part, our community are fairly DeFi savvy. So I think a lot of them have been in a lot of projects that did way worse or failed or quickly went to zero. So I think nobody's really openly complained much about it. People have asked about the impermanent loss and, what do we think of it, or are we worried about it, that type of thing. And I'm sure everyone would love results to be, what we targeted initially, which was 5% a week. But I don't think anyone's really been concerned about the results. So I could be wrong, and if anyone in here is, feel free to let us know. But we're also very open, right? So it's never a surprise if someone's paying attention and they're worried about that. They see every single day's daily results. The DBank is shared of all our wallets, all our positions. They can
Right.
see where is the impermanent loss right now. Did something happen overnight? That was negative. What's the value of things? So I think with all that, nobody's just blindsided and, hey guys, this week there's no payment or something like that, which we see in other programs.
Right. You have your first complaint, and the complaint is that someone cannot afford a Kingdom NFT.
Well, maybe
Just so you know.
a piece of a kingdom, and if he has other people with pieces, they can assemble the puzzle.
Right. Um, Talk to me a little bit, talking of your NFTs and the slightly dearer ones. Talk to me a little bit on the announcement that you made today that looked very exciting for both any prospective investors and people that are currently invested.
Yeah, so that is all. I have to say thanks to Raza. He's a big part of our community, obviously a big supporter, and that shows it. He's here in the audience right now. I see Ryu, the fighter PFP.
Right.
So yeah, this is something, before doing it, Raz asked me, can we have a phone call? We had a phone call, we spoke. I'm happily sharing, our plans with them. But we didn't propose having a 100K NFT. He actually asked if he were thinking about putting that kind of money in, is there something we could do a little bit differently with the ROI cycles? And then just general questions like, do we feel, where do we feel we're at? How does the future look? How do we feel as far as confidence? All these type of questions, which would be very natural for, anywhere near that sum of money.
Right.
But yeah, we can obviously let Raza comment on his thought process, but from our side, it was a little bit of a surprise out of the blue. We're always going to be flexible, right? Accommodate anybody who wants to do anything. But if we, and I hope people believe that if we didn't feel comfortable, let's say we did think, things are going bad, we'd rather wait, we'd rather not risk someone's, that amount of money, I would have told them that. But we do believe in our farming, what we're doing, and we do think he will ROI and he will make plenty of profits in the future. So we were very happy to accept it. And knowing that it also helps the entire ecosystem. And that's kind of why our announcement hinted at, really show your appreciation because it will blend in and bring everyone's results up, which short term means Raz is actually taking a hit versus, let's say, he had privately farmed that money. He's actually helping the entire ecosystem, just like everyone who buys, when we're in impermanent loss. And on the flip side, though, he is acquiring more position for when things do go up. He'll see the other side of that. So
Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask if they also have any particular extra say in where that money or any future money goes in, or which farm it might go to, or how you invest it. Because, of course, it's such a large sum. And while I'm going to speak on, what I believe it means when a investor or a group of investors are prepared to back a project like this in the way that they have. I do wonder, do they have any higher say? Is there anything that you guys won't disclose, and understandably so, that happens in the background whereby you might have to go to them and say, look, this is our thoughts. What do you think?
At least in this case, no, it wasn't something where there were any demands as far as where we place it or how we manage it. It came across as, hey, you guys are doing your thing. I believe in your thing, or I believe in you guys. Just do what you're going to do with it. I could imagine there would be other people, especially maybe if it's a community with their treasury or something else where they'd want a little more input. We're always happy to absolutely listen to all the input. But at the end of the day, we have to make the decision. So it won't be influenced by if someone wants us to put it somewhere and we don't agree with putting it there. We'll probably just tell them, look, if that's your demand or your requirement, we're just not going to accept the funds.
I won't try and embarrass Raza by bringing them up on stage and asking questions, although I'd love to. Do you feel you're getting a little bit of a cult following, and how does that feel from a personal perspective?
I think it's pretty cool because we've had this same kind of feeling before, but it was a long time ago. It was when we first got in the space. We had people in our Master Brews company. Everything we did, they were absolutely coming along for the ride. We even had something where, if you were in all of our different projects that were going on in the NFT space, you had a special role and it was called a brewski. And, we really had that kind of cult following. But over time, because we failed to deliver the games due to funding, issues, or you could call it even some budget mismanagement, some bad assumptions on investor type things, obviously that died out, right? We still have a pretty hardcore group of a small group, but most people have faded away or gone dormant and such. So we lost that feeling. And then obviously with Lazarus Pit, when we came into that, totally different experience because there was a lot of people at first that were kind of excited, cautiously optimistic, right? It was a big switchover. There was at least some positivity injected. But then very quickly, as the results faded and the market, tanked further and the portfolio lost some of its value, we could see that turned a little more negative. And there was absolutely people in there like, oh, this is just another scam and I'll never get my money back and things like that continue in there to this day. So it's definitely not the same as the Monstro vibe, where
Mm-hmm.
even though it's passive income and it's not always the most active Discord, there's absolutely people in there having fun. And I think the biggest thing that added to the fun, other than obviously people are making some money, small things like the server emojis. We have so many now that I have to thank T Style. He's in here as well, Mr. Deadpool. He creates so many fun emojis and people get into it and use it, and it does create a more fun vibe and it does create followers. And we've had people message us too, say, hey, if you're ever launching something new, let me know. I want to be in it. To answer all those people, no, anything new we're going to launch is going to be under Monstros Universe from now on.
Mm-hmm.
So we're also, we've brought in Lazarus Pit. We had a plan there we discussed for a long time. We pulled the trigger on it. We think it's for the best. We're also, in discussions. Here's some alpha for you. We're going to acquire Master Brews mostly for whelps and heroes and villains. Bring those under the Monstro Games fold. We're going to do things. Basically, we don't want anything distracting from our focus going forward. So no more clients, no more client work. Anybody who comes along, I'll throw them a shout out. I'm happy to throw it to the upfront team. They've proven by far, they know what they're doing. Their tech team is great. Shout out to .fx, Akira. So absolutely going to send them any clients that come our way. I want nothing to do with clients ever again. And Monstro is going to be the universe, the brand of everything we've done in the past. And getting those holders, we still feel we owe them massively. And through Monstro, I think we're going to be able to bring them into the fold and finally fulfill some of the promises that have been on the shelf for, a year and a half.
Right. Great. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what the end game is and where you see yourselves headed. I know we've spoken on it a little bit already in terms of what you want to build out, but I'm always curious to see if you really have a final image and thought in your head. However, before I ask, I have an observation to make. I find it fascinating that whenever we speak, you always say we when it comes to discussing your successes and how hard you've worked and where you've put your effort in, and only I when you're expressing an opinion. And I think that's probably something that not many people are going to even pay attention to. But it is always impressive when a team lead and someone who sits at the top says we over I, because it shows that you're really thinking as a collective and you value your team. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out to everybody listening, that that's something to
That
really pick up
that
on. And
shows your observation skills for sure, because I think there's maybe one person who pointed that out to me where even in the past, right, if I was the one making a decision on my own, which does happen sometimes, I've always represented it as the team and always said we, and it's just something that became a habit now, and I think it's a good habit. Like
yes,
you're
I agree.
mentioning, we if we're a team on a project, it doesn't matter what your individual role is. And I'll use Gabo for a quick example, right? He does things to arrange AMAs, to market, to bring me news of what's out there, stuff like that. So, for example, I can launch a smart contract, has nothing to do with Gabo. He'll never see it, he'll never review it, throw it out, and be like, hey, we just launched this smart contract. And it's just, yeah, I guess my brain at this point always thinks team first. And yeah, if it's an opinion, though, I guess it thinks, this is my opinion. And sometimes it's more, controversial, although it's toned
Right.
down these years. And I don't want it to be the opinion of the company unless it actually is, like unless it was discussed previously.
No, I think it's a very good quality to have, and I'm very impressed that I don't think I've heard you slip up once in that respect. And most people will at least slip up every now and again, and I haven't heard you slip up once. So, credit where credit's due in that respect. That's the sign of somebody who really is leading from the top and is making sure that every decision is a collaborative one. And I think that's where the real strength is, especially in this space, and especially with the speed at which it moves.
Yeah, that's I guess kudos on noticing, because I don't point it out. I don't. To me, it's just second nature at this point. But it's cool. It came across as I don't flip them and mistake them. And one person, a big Marvel fan, of course, he's like, "You talk like you're Venom." I'm like,
Right. Yes.
"What?"
Um, yeah, exactly. But the venom that doesn't eat people's heads, the good guy, right? Um,
You know.
so the final kind of vision. I know you had Nexus Wars, and I'm not going to touch on that at all, really, other than to ask whether or not there are any mechanics from that you want to bring into Monstro, or are you able to compartmentalize them enough to say, actually, this might not fit with this. It's a vision. And as you spoke on a little bit earlier, retrospectively thinking that you could have maybe moved in a different direction to raise the funding that you needed to back something else. Is that what you're planning to do with things like Nexus Wars? Because I know it's not gone, it's just, put to one side for the moment. Or are you always thinking of ways whereby you might be able to bring the two together?
Yeah, I think that, and something, it's another on-chain project we had, which was called End of Days, was a season-based on-chain battle tournament. We had 3 seasons prepared with guest artists. We had a lot of traction when the market had its really big crash and crushed NFT sales little over a year ago now. Those are things where some of them had cool mechanics or ideas we can incorporate into new on-chain games under the Monstro brand and using the Monstro styles and such. I don't think they'd be fully independent. So just talking about the art, right? Nexus
Right.
Wars, sci-fi, etc. We absolutely can still have sci-fi with Monstro flair. So we can still keep a lot of it and just rework it. And as we get more experienced every day into what investors would invest in and what they wouldn't, what they're looking for, as we have more of them to talk to and bounce ideas off of, hopefully it means in the future everything we release will have been well vetted as far as having interest, and we'll never have situations where we have to say, we wasted our time again and we're going to refund everyone and try something else.
Hmm.
Hopefully now we'll time things only when they're proven out to have that interest. And for a lot of those, it probably won't be till the next bull run comes, because they need a lot more people that are kind of circling around in the space right now. They need a lot of fresh, excited new people who think, oh, playing this game on chain is cool. Like they're not just looking for passive income, they're looking for some fun as well. So I don't think there's enough people right now to do a lot of those ideas. I think they have to wait.
It was going to be one of my questions, is whether or not you thought there was an appetite for it at this point in the space. Games are tough, or a tough sell the majority of the time as is, especially when it comes to games and money. But you kind of answered that already. Do you think, and this question kind of leans back on a conversation that you were a part of with Serenity during one of the blockchain basics and Alpha Cruise was hosting. And one of the questions that Viral raised is whether or not there's enough crossover between projects to create a bit more of a world and an ecosystem, especially when it comes to gaming. Do you think that's something that this space needs? Are you guys actively looking at partners? I know you've got Spritz that we're going to speak about in a minute, but are you actively looking at other partners that you kind of want to get into, maybe create a bit of a world or an ecosystem with them that will be something that's fun but also lucrative to investors?
Yeah, so for all our games, eventually, and with all the ones in the past, we've always planned around being able to easily have partnerships, and whether that's including their own character in our game, swaps for our characters in their game if they happen to have one, anything we can do to expand our reach, we've always planned to be part of games. Everything, if it's something that it makes more sense to offer it as a private label, that's another thing we're always willing to build in. And I think it's a great thing, meaning, I'll give you a good example. We were looking at doing a mobile version of Marvel's Snap that was called Rugged. And we
Right.
had everything, set up. We had some video game veterans who were on the team. We had an amazing artist and everything was going well. Again, it was the early part of the bear. We didn't end up being able to raise the 50K we wanted to go forward. We have some of the sample art, which I dropped after that last blockchain basics. And the idea there was that we'd have core cards. Everything else would be from other communities, whether it's their NFT character or something representing their project or their founder. And it was all parody style. But that game, there were people who asked, we had a few twists in it from Marvel Snap. When people saw the design document, they were like, would we be able to have our version? And one of those teams was the Smurfs. So the people that have all the Web3 rights and the gaming rights to the Smurfs, we met them through the Blockchain Gaming Alliance. And we said, yes, absolutely. As long as you're going to map your characters and, the actual abilities one-to-one with ours, we can let you skin a build cosmetically. Of course, have your own token involved, your own NFTs, etc. And that's something that could be a real business source for us, being able to produce games that people can then, if I'm one of these NFT projects from last bull run, who a lot of them blew all their money trying to build games, didn't get anywhere, right? Left their communities hanging. We almost did the same, not on purpose, but our community's still hanging, waiting on games. But if I told you, hey, we have a professional game, it's out in app stores, or even if not, people are playing it, and all you have to do is pay X or X up front and then a fee on the share, a share on the fees. That's something very appealing. I think people can jump on it, be ready to go launch it within maybe a couple of weeks or a month.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of room for business there, and I think that's something that'll appeal to a lot of projects and communities. So everything we build in the gaming space, we want to have that mentality. For Whelps, which is a racer, we wanted to have the ability when land was hot, right, to sell plots of land on the racetrack, and then you can customize it, right? You can actually have, I want to put my statue of, my character here, a statue of the Mad Hatter. I want to design the race course like a tea party. And whatever you do, all right, now you'll share in the revenue from the track you own when people pay for that as downloadable content or to unlock it, or if they're in competitive mode on it, right, there's a share of the prize. So all these different things were built with that in mind. And I don't think that'll ever change. Like, I think it's a great way to market yourself without spending a fortune on marketing that may or may not work. Get communities involved and let them do all your marketing for you.
Okay, I was going to ask in terms of what you thought maybe marketing aspect might be and how much cost and time that will take up. But if you're always thinking about ways to do it without having to spend too much, and I guess one of those things that you're doing in that way is to make sure that whatever partnership you have, like the Spritz partnership, it's a branded partnership. Is that right?
Yeah, like we don't like when people say the word partnership or, collabs was very popular when it was just a trading of whitelist spots, or maybe it was a trade of an
Right.
AMA, and people are like, "Oh, we have this amazing partnership," but to me that's not a partnership, right? There has to be some
Agreed.
level of integration, some level of deeper, you don't have 1,000 partners because you gave out 1,000 or 10,000 whitelist spots, right? So to us, yeah, we actually look at the term as, is there something deeper here than everybody else could just get in 5 minutes? And we want a real partnership. And that's why we won't have many, but we'll continually add them as we find them.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you on that. There have been several times when people have reached out and said, "Hey, let's partner together," and it's a CEE, or they want to have some kind of whitelist that we give away, or affiliate link, or whatever it might be. And the pushback from us has always been, "Well, that's not a partnership. That's just you know two people coming together to do one thing or two things with each other very briefly." I think some integration is absolutely needed, and so I think you're absolutely right on that. Talk to me about Spritz. I know it's one of those things that you guys are excited about. I know a lot of people like it. What does that partnership look like?
Yeah, so the ETA from their team right now, that's all it's waiting on, is on Thursday. They're super busy though, so I wouldn't be surprised if they need an extra day. But what we're going to do is we wanted, when we came across the service, and I think the first person to mention it to me was Pocket Aces, Justin. So
Hmm.
thank you to Justin for mentioning that. But I was looking for solutions where we could possibly have a branded physical card for Monstro. That's not something Spritz has just yet, but that led to me investigating, what they do. They do it extremely well and very cost efficient versus all the other ones I've come across. And this is something I could see as a useful service for everyone in our community. We feel it is a safe, fairly vetted company. We don't think there's a risk there for the users. We've talked to their founder and team now many times. And the other thing was they were open to work with us and expand with us and incorporate some of our ideas. So we're going to start off fairly simple, right? Because they are so busy, they have to see a level of interest from our side. But as that interest grows, they're willing to prioritize more and more of our ideas. So to start with, anybody holding a Monstro NFT or holding a Lazarus Pit NFT, if they use Spritz, whether they come through our link or don't, they're going to get a discount on the usual fees. So that's a
Right.
nice, easy one, right? It's a free perk for everybody. You don't have to use it. You don't have to do anything. But if you want to use that type of service, well, now it'll be just that little bit cheaper, and we are going to get a little piece of that as well. So basically, we're going to get their wholesale rate. We are going to set the fee below their normal fee, and the little bit we keep is going to go back directly into our ecosystem, which right now we'll probably dump it into the farms. Later on, maybe we dump that into, maybe it's a token buyback when we have a token. Maybe it's something else we want to do for the community. But it's something where we don't expect it to produce a lot of revenue for us, but it's something that seemed like a no-brainer given it's not costing us to do and it's providing a really useful service. Now we're going to
Right.
customize it, right? It'll have our look and feel. There's a couple other things we want to do. One of those is people will be able to set up an address and then we will accept it. It'll be written on chain. And when we do the paydays, we'll be able to use that address if you choose to set one and send your pay to it, which will automatically trigger the off ramp to your bank. So, of course, there'll be whatever the delay is. 24 hours has been what I've seen.
Mhm.
So this actually means your Monstro payday can arrive in your bank in fiat, which a lot of people do still want to this point, just as an option if you want to do it. If you don't, no need to. So those are the types of things we're looking at doing. And then, of course, they will eventually have a physical card. So that'll be something we'll have a nice Monstro look and feel on. That'll be, I'd put it more in the cool category. but it's also not something we're going to charge users for. We'll just directly, either it'll be at cost or it'll be cost with maybe a discount. Because I've seen programs that, you have to buy an NFT that's like $500 more just to get a card, and the card doesn't come with anything on it. It's just to get their card. So that's not going to be the way we do things. Everything is, hey, this is a service that benefits our users. Whatever little bit we make on it, awesome. And it doesn't cost us money to establish it.
Okay, great. Thank you. A very comprehensive response. I'm going to talk on the roadmap a little bit. I'm going to mention the token, and mainly I'm going to ask why have a token in the first place, and I'm sure you're going to have very decent pushback. Before I do, I want to go back to the NFTs because there's going to be questions about how many people can get the Genesis Monstro NFTs that are sold out, for example. But again, I just want to remind people that we are talking about a project right now that is consistently topping our investment update channel with very good returns every single week through yield farming. And it's one thing that I think gets lost when we speak because you've got so much going on. So again, I just want to remind people of that and then bring you back maybe to just kind of explain a little bit about how many NFTs people can hold. Are there going to be options to get some of these that have sold out further down the line through gameplay? How might that look?
Yeah, so we are dividing them into series. And the first series, the original, which was our original supporters, we call it the Siege series, which is our Genesis ones. So these, the plan is, although they are heavily invested in farms right now as their only source of income, they will get a little bit of a perk or a reach into everything the ecosystem does. These are sold out. These were for our very first supporters, the people who took the most risk when we were very unproven and just had maybe a week or two under our belts, or not even. So this is something where we always want to give back to them and thank them for that. And that series, you cannot get it unless you get it off secondary. We will never mint any of it again or sell it, and neither will the contract. So that's something that's done with. We do see people selling them. Now I've seen like $100 castle sell for 300 or 400, or maybe one even went for 500. And it's something that will, as we grow and as we gain more people in our community, those are perhaps going to be more valuable, perhaps not. But we're always going to try to give back to them. When we do have, for example, a token, they'll get different allocations of it from the airdrop that'll happen for them. So yeah, everything we do, we always have a little thought of, all right, with this new feature, what value are we giving to the original supporters? Then every other series is related purely to its own specific, I'll call it a DApp. It's not necessarily a real DApp. But the farm series are all relating to farming, right? And their money goes into the farms, their yield comes from the farms. That's all they have going on. When we have game-specific NFTs for investment in the games, they'll be tied to those games and their revenue. When we have tools that do have service fees, if we have tool investment NFTs, they'll tie to that. The only other thing about the farms NFTs is that they do cycle. So meaning because cycle A was at 90-10 as a split, once that's sold out and we close that window, cycle B and all future ones will start at 80-20. And we want to transition from one to the other roughly at the 25% ROI mark. And that was a bit of a challenge because we said, look, why would someone buy a cycle B if a couple days later the C comes out where they start that cycle at 0, right? It wouldn't make any sense. So to get around that, we brainstormed and we came up with every future cycle is going to have a small tax on it, a $5 tax on a $100 NFT. This is the only money that doesn't go directly into the working capital for the farms. This goes to the previous cycle's holders. So everyone who owns a B, there's people who did buy right up until the minute C released because they said, hey, if a lot of C's get sold, I'm going to make that extra money back and then some. And it's a case where, we have 300 something B's sold, and I think we sold already about 100 C's. So there is $500 that's going to be split amongst those people on payday tomorrow. and there could be more next week, right, and the week after. And when C gets to that 25%, ROI mark, all right, now we'll introduce D. And it's just a way for us to transition, because we don't think someone should buy one that's 50% ROI or 80%
Right.
ROI, especially if they don't necessarily read everything and understand that. Then we might get unhappy people as well, right? So we tried to balance it as best we could, and this was the system we came up with.
Did you ever consider not allowing people to buy those NFTs once they've got one, that they just have a window that they have to commit to buying, and if they can't, they can't?
Yes, we do. If you're not a holder, so if you're someone brand new to Monstro, we do it, and this is purely for marketing reasons. At first, we did it for the reason of wanting to control the supply a bit and make sure we were able to place money, as we received it. We weren't having problems finding good places to put it, that type of thing. But now it's
Yeah.
transitioned into it's just a little bit of a sales tactic, maybe a marketing gimmick, if you want to call it that, where we try to create little windows of FOMO and try to do whatever little bit of marketing we do it around that window. It makes it easier. So it's something where, hey, if you miss it, yes, you have to wait till next time, or maybe you buy one off secondary off someone, giving those people added value. Now you have one. Now you can buy on demand like everyone else.
Right. And there are going to be some out there that are going to be a little cheeky, and I'm sure will tongue in cheek say, well, isn't that part Ponzinomics if you're going to be recycling people's money, however small it might be, back into the system? Do you see it like that, or do you see it, slightly differently?
So actually, that came up in our mod chat. I think this morning, someone said, "Won't people call it a Ponzi that we give the $5 off the 100 back to the other people?"
Hmm.
And I think it's a bit of maybe semantics, or maybe what you consider a Ponzi. To me, a Ponzi scheme is different than Ponzinomics, which I think are in everyday life. But a Ponzi scheme would be, okay, we cannot pay anything to these holders unless we get new money in. That to me is a
Right.
Ponzi scheme. Whereas this is, I see it as a bonus, but I do see how someone could call it some type of Ponzinomics. Um, but anyone, I think, who's looking at it objectively, they're not going to consider this a Ponzi. The fact that you get a very, very small bonus on top of your NFT, it's very different than a Ponzi scheme.
I agree. And Ponzinomics is in everyday life, so I agree with that too. Um, yeah, it's just a question to ask, based around what people like to jump on in this space, and a lot of people have perfect reason to jump on things like that. So your roadmap. We've spoken a little bit on a token. Why have a token in the first place? Is it something that maybe is going to create a bit of pressure for you guys in the long term, or do you believe you've figured it out in such a way that you're actually not going to have any pressure from having that token at all?
So we have a couple of reasons why, because obviously we can always do everything in stablecoin, right? We know that 99.9% of projects can do that, yet tons of them still choose to have a token. So we think we do have enough areas it's going to be a utility, and some things it will facilitate as far as some of the services we have in mind. But I
Mm.
think also once we studied it, and I had a long, long chat with GPT-4 about this, and what conclusion we came to is one of the main perks of a token is actually rallying the community behind it, as well as giving the potential for individuals to have more control over their profits. And some people, in a great case, yes, they might be able to make a lot more. And to people who say, like, also, why have a token? Why do companies have stock? That would be, one of my answers. It's
Mm.
very, very similar, except in our case, we're not using the token as an initial raise like an IPO would be. We're not going to have a pre-sale. We're not going to ICO the token whatsoever. But yes, I think with the brand, we want to show that there can be tokens like this that can be healthy. We do have some things technically we want to try to do with it, with our own farm and with some other systems. And then part of it is we're using it as, in this Lazarus Pit acquisition, we feel it's a much higher chance we can get it to help people recover their money than if we just had to produce the dollars from it. Because I think what a lot of
Right.
people don't necessarily understand what a token is, unless everyone is trying to bank run you at the same time, it's going to go up and down and up and down. And that allows people to maximize on it without you needing that money. So when Lazarus Pit's down $12 million, we don't need $12 million of liquidity to make everyone whole, unless everyone was trying to exit at the exact same moment, which with a healthy token would not be the case. Some people might want to farm it, stake it, use it in many of the areas you'll be able to use it in, do other things with it, right? Trade it, speculate on it, and hold it. So it's something where it reduces the requirement of getting out of a 96% hole we inherited from that project. It lets us do that. It lets us do the same with Master Brews, Whelps, and Heroes and Villains, where we're acquiring the games as assets that are both, combined, they're almost maybe $800,000 in, many months of development in. It allows us to acquire that without putting any money up front and trying to get it from investors or trying to take it from Monstro as it grows, while still providing a value. So there's a lot of uniqueness, I think, about how the token can apply to Monstro versus a standard project. And we have a lot of plans for it. We don't intend for it to be a pump and dump as by far as best as we can manage it. And to that end, it's all being designed, and I'm sure the design will change by the time we release it, but it's being designed, it's being consulted on by a lot of people, and a lot of people who we respect who see it like really, really love it. And I think that's awesome to have your peer kind of positive feedback. Some people have given some, constructive criticisms. Some people have given different concerns. But overall, most people have said, hey, this is pretty cool. And if it works, I would be like really impressed.
Now, I mean, that's a great answer. And I like the pushback. However, that sentence, if it works, always worries me. And especially with something that is already successful and is working in the way it should. Will you consider, or are you planning to maybe, as you said at the beginning of that response, you can do this in stable tokens, most projects can. Is there part of you that might consider doing it in stable tokens first to see if it seamlessly can fit into the ecosystem before you transition to a token that may or may not have the same effect?
Well, there'd be nothing to test that we can do with the token that we could do with a stablecoin, meaning like if we were just going to charge, on some services, charge a fee and do it in stablecoin, like there's nothing to test there. Like it would just work, right?
Right.
There's no volatility, there's nothing to it. We know it wouldn't work for the things like Lazarus Pit and Whelps and Master Brews acquisitions. We wouldn't be able to pay them the hundreds of thousands of dollars of value and then get it to millions and millions purely with stablecoin. It'd be a totally different approach. And again, back to taking years and years, perhaps. If it gets there, there's no guarantees with that either. So I think it's not something we're going to backtrack on. But the one thing we do have is we have the ability to back it with revenue. And I'm sure people have heard that in some other projects before. But here it is a case that as people ROI, right, just from farms alone, our revenue is going to be doubling and increasing as those tiers drop. And we're also going to be hitting the bull run. So there's a lot of things that are going to come together that give us, I think, the best fighting chance. And we can't guarantee it, of course, because that would be a lie. But I think we've studied so many tokens and what they do right, what they do wrong, where we think we can improve, that we do feel confident we can make it happen. If we didn't, no, we just wouldn't bother with a token because we do acknowledge everything we're doing, except for maybe some of the tech features that maybe we won't even introduce, if there's no interest when the time comes.
Right.
Other than that, yeah, everything we're doing, just like I'd say 99% of projects, you can absolutely use stablecoin. You don't need a custom token for, but it does facilitate certain things. It opens some doors. I think the part that, a lot of people overlook is the way a community rallies behind it and it gets your branding out there, and it's a marketing aspect on its own. There's benefit to that as well. And we've seen, even some of these meme coins, some of the way communities rally behind them is amazing. and how, close it brings people and how much they really want their project to succeed versus others. So that's a vibe we can absolutely get with Monstro.
Yeah, I agree on the community aspect. I think you're spot on there, and communities can really rally. And I mean, actually, that's exactly what we're trying to do here at the Pillars is really engage with the community and get them to rally for one another, not necessarily for us, but for one another. So then the pressure starts to, if I were to push another pressure point, just to be a little cheeky now while we're chatting, the pressure then becomes, how are you going to market it? And I hate the question when marketing, so I'm not going to just kind of throw a broad question like that at you. But in terms of getting the word out there, in terms of making sure that the community is of a size that is sizable enough to be able to really push this token out, do you have any kind of unique approaches that you're thinking about taking in that respect, that the community know that they can get excited about as you guys get closer to this token?
So, well, one thing for sure I can say is we're going to have to expand our team at that point, and for that point, and bring in people who are successful in that realm. And we have people in our network who are and who have expressed interest. It's all about, what do we have to offer them that they'll accept. But absolutely, it's not something we can do with just, a simple small team. We need that to be a full-time job, if not two jobs, if not, if it's not a firm we're working with. We prefer key individuals versus firms, just, being fully transparent. Firms, you're never their priority, right? They always overcharge, there's extra overhead. So no, we prefer people who can join our team. But that's absolutely something we're well aware of, that it's not something we can just do as a couple of people and be successful to the level we want to get to, which is, our first goal for the token would be $100 million market cap. And when some people say, oh, that's crazy, looking at where tokens are right now, it's not crazy when you consider last bull run, there were over 8,000 different tokens that achieved that level, and very quickly, who had way less going for them than we intend to have or already have with Monstro. So when you put it in that perspective, that's why we think these are realistic things. Maybe not to the bear market, but within a year or two, in the full bull run, that is our minimum kind of goal. That would make all of Lazarus Pit whole, which would be an amazing accomplishment I don't think anybody could touch that accomplishment, quite frankly, if we were able to do that for that community. That's fully our goal there. And then if we can get the games going for the Master Brews folks, we will feel amazing that we've helped everybody. Nobody is left hanging. And that's kind of our driving goal, like what we're trying to get to within a couple of years, as well as, of course, make money for ourselves one day. Don't know when that day will come, but I'm sure one day.
That was going to be actually on my list of questions. I'm going to jump on that because I think it's important that if you're working for, if you're sitting at the top of a project and you're working for people to do something as big as making Lazarus Pit whole, for example, you need to be fairly compensated for that work. That's my belief. I think it's important that you can see a tangible income coming in from the hard work that you're putting in, because not only does it mean you're not going to get apathetic as you're putting that hard work in, but it also reminds you that you're working for something. So, to me, teams should be, even if it's a small amount, paid sooner rather than later. How fast are you trying to get to that point where you guys can start generating that for yourselves?
So it's a bit of a unique situation. Well, with Lazarus Pit, we always knew we wouldn't make money from it anytime soon. And that's what we were okay with, because we felt like indirectly the relationship with investors, whether we were able to bring them into Master Brews in our games, or we started something new and they came along to support us, that was going to be the direct value we'd have from there, from helping. And it's something that came true with Monstro. I would say the majority of our initial investors in Monstro were all from the Lazarus Pit, and they all followed us because of what we were trying to do there to help. So I think in that aspect, that was something we never saw ourselves taking money from until we returned them significant amounts of money, have that all played out with the original plan. yes, in a year or two, we would have got our 10%, they'd get 90% and keep going that way. And if at the end of many years, we had made everyone whole, awesome. We would have had a large portfolio worth millions, and that would have been really cool. But short term, it was always about building the relationships and getting the investors to come with us in whatever other endeavors we tried. And that's been successful. So I think that has worked out great. It's not something where we're going to forget about Lazarus Pit. As you can see, we still want to make that goal happen for numerous reasons. But number one is because we told them we would at least try our best. And number two is, yes, we just think it would be fantastic to be able to did that. So that's kind of where Lazarus Pit falls. And with Monstro, it's something where right now we structured everything to show people the long-term vision is aligned with their own. They're making a lot more, right now than we are. But we have to remember that it's a sunk cost. So while they do have an indefinite payout, right, for things like farms, at the very end, right, it's a 10-90 split. So very minimal to them, very highly in our favor. Of course, they've ROI'd, 8 or 9 times by then. So it should hopefully be fine. But all those assets are almost 100% ours. And we feel those are going to be worth, right now we're almost at $500,000 invested. We easily feel that's a multi-million-dollar portfolio of positions that we're going to have. And if I told you, hey, you can work for very little, but with a very high chance you'll have multi-millions of dollars of assets in, let's say, 3 years. Probably, you'd have to weigh that and see what's the realistic probability. But for us right now, it's a very high probability that we're going to have that. So it makes the motivation part very easy, as well as, I can tell you, not ever having to take a client again is awesome. This is the unique part. I can only do that because I was able to sell my house for a little bit of profit, not much. And I'm actually, I did buy a vault in Monstro. I do have some of the other ones I bought, just like anyone else. And that helps support the system and show we believe in it. But being honest, I do still have a bit of that money I put completely into farming, where I can play it my own way, right? I can be a bit riskier if I want. I can do it how I want. And that's allowing me to earn just enough to kind of live, cover all the expenses, and not need clients. So it's a unique situation in that I'm doing and benefiting from what we're doing every day for everyone, enough so that I don't have to personally take from our treasury. And then as far as, Gabo and Adam, they're still totally fine. They obviously still have other jobs, other forms of revenue. Now, when we get to a point they can get paid, that'd be awesome. They can, if they choose, get out of those, come in full time. But for now, yeah, I'm the only full-time person because this little bit of a unique situation with selling my house finally allowed me to be in that position. Otherwise, yeah, splitting time between Monstro and clients would be a major pain in the ass and not something that would be ideal. But people now who are, investors or want to be investors, you have my full attention completely, 24/7.
Thank you. And it sounds like some of these clients really did a number on you, because I'm hearing absolutely no love from you to them.
If I only told you about the richest dog in the world, client.
I wonder if, once you have a significant enough runway of proof that this yield farming is exactly what you can do extremely well, and you're able to show, continued fantastic results, whether there is ever going to be perhaps a thought of an NFT that might be rare, maybe it's lottery based, that you were originally going to do, or however someone can win it or purchase it, whatever it might be, but that they get access to what it is that you're doing in those farms, and perhaps the opportunity to copy trade. I think that could be something that might be fun and a nice addition to your ecosystem.
Yeah, everybody can actually do that right now. And some people do, and they've told us they do. And, they've actually given me a thanks or a shout out to our team. And I think one of them might be in here. I don't know if he came in or left, but Pelly, if you know Pelly the clown,
Yeah.
so he copy trades us a lot. And I know there's several others who do, because we have things on DBank anybody can look at any moment. They know all our wallets, right? They can follow our wallets. And some people ask us, doesn't that hurt you? Like, wouldn't that be money he would otherwise be putting into Monstro? And
Right.
the thing is, it's a bit of both worlds, right? Some people want to explore and dabble in it and risk money. And he's still an active Monstro contributor. He still invests and reinvests. But he said, like, I still like to do it on my own, and maybe I do something different than you choose to do, right? Or sell at a different time. Or so we don't have a problem with that at all. We're providing the management part. It's also, if you're going to copy trade us, it's because you're really active and you are into farming anyways. It's not something for someone who wants passive income to be doing. So
Right.
I think that there's zero problem if people copy us. We're happy to share information. We're happy to talk. And these are also the people that I mentioned kind of help us. We can bounce ideas off them. We know they might have heard about things they tell us that we didn't know about yet. All that type of stuff.
Okay, great. I'm going to start wrapping it down. I've only got a couple more questions for you. Before I do, I'm just going to remind everybody that if you want to be eligible for the giveaway, you have to be in the Monstro Discord, which I've just put into the community questions section, and we're going to be running that giveaway now. So that'll be pinging, and that's an NFT, I believe. Which cycle NFT is it that they're going to be able to win?
It is the current new one, which is the Cycle C.
Cycle C, and I am going to be throwing my name into the hat as well because I'm excited for that one. Although I'm certain I won't win. In terms of your roadmap, no, let me ask this question first because I think it's a valid question. I think it's a valid observation, in fact. And he might be cross with me if I don't raise it. With tokens, we spoke on it a little bit. One of the things that often happens, especially when the community kind of dies off in terms of how much they're pushing it, is a dump. And we do see that there are projects that are going to then pivot. They're going to move in a different direction. And I know you have, aspirations and what you believe are very fair and real aspirations to get to a certain market cap. However, if that doesn't work out and that doesn't happen and you do need to pivot, and I looked at something that I was invested in and completely forgot about because it tanked, frankly, and they've now moved in a different direction and I was blissfully unaware. That communication to your community, how soon is that going to come? How much of warning will you give them? How important is it to you guys to make sure that you're communicating those kind of things to the community as and when they might happen?
Yeah, we're pretty quick about it. I think other team members might say I never shut my mouth, or so I'm excited to share news. And if it's bad news, we're always quick to share it as well. So I don't think with Monstro, I think people can see how active we are and can see that anything we want to do, release, it's out there. Like we get it out there pretty quick. And I don't think that'll change.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, your roadmap. I'm sure there's some alpha that you're going to be able to give us. Otherwise, I'm going to keep you here for another 4 hours. Just, but
So
you have things that are on that roadmap. People want to hear something that's exciting that might be imminent on its way. Do you have something that you can share with us that people can get really excited about?
yes. So I'll share one that I know some people are interested in because we spoke about it with them today. And it came up in the Upfront Discord as a question. It came up in another place the other day. So if you saw in the roadmap, there was farm silos. And what these were originally meant to be was a long-term, no choice about it compounding farm, because we really don't compound our current farming. We've determined that unless you're doing it for the long term, it was not wise. You were, especially paying out weekly, there's more chance we'd lose the rewards we've earned all week than there was of gaining from a week's worth of compounding. We
Right.
backtested that, back to last cycle on many of the popular bigger farms. So it's something where long term, yes, it can work. But again, now that we're seeing that there's so few farms that are actually standing up right now in the bear market with decent returns, we didn't want to put that kind of risk on. And we've actually pivoted. We have the whole plan laid out. We will share it soon. We're going to make some nice infographics and such. We're going to do something called silos, which are essentially a 12-month lock. And we're going to do different silos of different narratives or different niches. So perhaps you have a an AI silo, a gaming silo, a layer 2 silo. Maybe you have a more degen ones like a meme silo, etc. Maybe you have a blue chip silo, and there'll be a large window to get into these where people will be able to put in whatever they like. We will pick our team based on research, based on groups we're in, based on different information, the top, let's say 5, maybe the top 10 tokens that fit that narrative, put them in whatever, amounts we choose into that bucket or into that silo, and it'll be locked for 12 months. And that should hopefully take us into the bull market when it'll unlock for everyone. And meantime, of course, you'll be able to know what's in it. You'll be able to see how it's going, the results that'll all be available on the UI. This will be trustless through the smart contracts. Once we've acquired those tokens and put them in the contract with the funds invested, nothing for us to do. Everything works by contract, by UI. And
Right.
a very small fee at the end of that goes back to our ecosystem. And yeah, we think it's something people have been asking for. It's a little bit of fun. It's something, again, it bonds the community though, because if you're all in this silo together, you're watching how it's doing. Maybe you're competing against the other silos. So that's something, yeah, we haven't announced yet till right now. Some people we've been bouncing, there's feedback we've been gathering. So some people today we spoke to about it. And we think it'll have interest, but the thing is, even if it doesn't have a minimum it has to meet, right? We're willing to build this. It's not an extreme effort. A lot of it is smart contract work, and they're a pretty simple UI. So once we actually build this is nothing we have to actively manage. We'll probably plug in something like early withdrawal for a penalty, that type of deal. But yeah, it'll be something where, hey, you get in a little index or a little ETF. It's protected from you being your own worst enemy, which sometimes a lot of us are for holding spot. It gets boring, right? You can't, you don't have the patience. And then hopefully there's many X's for all involved. So that's a little something we're going to do. And we don't know the level of interest there'll be, but it doesn't really matter. It's not dependent on any certain minimum or anything.
I have a ton of questions surrounding that. So I'm kicking myself now for having asked that at the end of the CE. So it will have to be a discussion that I drag you in once more to have. It sounds fun. I like that you always have out of the box ideas, outside of the box ideas, I should say. Sorry. When we talk about things privately, you're always throwing ideas in my direction, and I like the way you think in that respect, and I think it's great for the space. I think it's great for innovation. So I'm looking forward to see how you can build these things out and develop them further. It's going to be, an exciting journey to watch. Is there anything that I didn't ask you wish I had at this point?
No, I think we had a good in-depth, talk. There's other things on the roadmap. I won't get into those because that'll drag on much longer. But I will say we've pretty much defined how we want our referral program to work. That's a tricky one given things like self-referrals, right? It's very easy when it's on chain, and then you're bleeding money for no reason. And then as well, DeFi referral programs just have a bad reputation and stigma because a lot of them employ MLM and pyramid scheme type aspects to them. So, we've been thinking on this one, revisiting it numerous times. But we think we also have that one fully ironed out here. We're going to start bouncing it around, folks. And yeah, that's another roadmap item we'll pretty much start development on in the near future here.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you. It's been a great talk, as always. I love it when you come in to have a conversation with us, and I'm hoping we can do another one very soon so we can get into the silos.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll say one last thing for the silos. We're considering allowing invited guests to offer their own, let them take, the fee as well in 12 months. So I know, for example, I'll mention in upfront, a lot of people ask Derek in Magic, he's trading, can he have one? And the answer is sure, he can have one if he'd like to. Maybe, Mad Hatter, we will have the Hatter's silo, and put their money in. You get to pick what they have, right, and see how it goes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I like that. I like something that gamifies it a little bit. That's always fun. And as someone, a couple of people, FIP in particular, has pinged when PP partnership. That's also something that perhaps at some point we can discuss somewhere down the line. And just by interacting here in the pillars, people might be able to get into Monstro. That could be an exciting thing to explore.
I mean, we absolutely know the desires there. It's kind of a, in other partnerships, they have an asset they can give right now as far as a token, right? From what we've seen, we don't think it's the same fairness to say, hey, we'll give X token, but you're going to get it next year.
Right. Yeah.
And the problem,
for everybody that, I mean, obviously I'd never disclose what we talk about privately, but just so people know, you're very measured in your approach and very measured in the discussion. So, nothing that is discussed has ever kind of set off alarm bells in my head to say, oh, that might put some added pressure on what they're doing at the minute. That's not how you're approaching this. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah. And the thing with NFTs, like we've had people ask us, why don't you give them a vault, right? A $10,000 NFT, or why don't you give them X? And the only thing with that is we've promised our holders that the NFTs will never be dilutive. So even when we do a giveaway, just so people understand that, like when we do a giveaway here, we take the team funds and we buy the NFT and then send it to you. And that's how it works with everything. So even though the dilution at some point could be very minimal, we, gave that as a statement, as a promise that nothing that ever comes in, no NFTs, no new money, will ever dilute the existing holders. We want to honor that. We think it's really important to honor that. That also provides, the difficulty here where it's like, hey, yes, I could make you an awesome $25,000 NFT in 5 minutes and send it over, but it doesn't work with that.
Right. Great. And I think, a lot of the investors that are sitting in here listening now are going to be very pleased to hear that. I mean, that's it's a good approach. It's the right approach. And, let's see how long and fruitful this can be. I look forward to watching the journey. Keith, thank you so much for coming in. There's a ton of questions that perhaps I didn't get to that are in the community questions channel. Please, if you've got time, stick around and maybe see if there are a couple that you can answer. And just to everybody listening, thank you guys so much for coming in. And just a reminder to everybody that is listening that you can earn rewards just by interacting and engaging with us here at the Pillars. So by asking these great questions, not only do you get to hear someone like Keith really explain thoroughly what it is that they're doing, which gives you as much information as you can to make an informed investment decision, but you also get to learn a few things along the way too. Keith, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much. I look forward to doing it again.
I always love our AMAs because you do more research than anybody I've come across. And on top of that, you always have either a comment, observation, a question that nobody asks. And people, I think, know this. Like, I think that's your reputation, that they know they're going to get something that no other AMA asks them. So I think that's cool because I appreciate that people have that interest and attention to detail, rather.
Well, thank you very much. Very kind words. I appreciate them very much. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone in here, of course. And I'll just leave you with, if you are not familiar with Monstro yet, please come over, check us out. You can ask any questions you want. And I will try to get to all the community questions later tonight. But right now, I have to go on a date.
Aha, enjoy.
I shall.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.